Welcome to Star Trek Theory, where we look at ideas, theories, and speculation on all things Star Trek. The 1994 movie Generations was a landmark movie that finally brought the two captains together and was the first outing of the Next Generation crew. While an entertaining movie and fun to see the Next Gen crew on the big screen, the film's pacing felt a little bit off. And it doesn't really make all that much sense. Kirk gets pulled into the Nexus, but 80 years later still feels like he just got there. And then Picard is pulled in, but he remembers everything, and without really much explanation is able to convince Kirk to exit the Nexus and help save the galaxy. But here's a theory which could explain a lot of the pacing inconsistencies and bring some of these story issues together to start to make sense. What if Picard is still in the Nexus and he never left?
What is this? Where am I?
To better understand this theory, first we need to understand what the Nexus actually is. The Nexus is described as being an energy wave that crossed the galaxy every 39 years, which acted like a doorway to the Nexus itself. Inside the Nexus, it's another dimension. Time and space have no meaning, allowing you to visit any time and any place or see any person you imagined. So the Nexus is essentially heaven. It's an ethereal place where you exist as consciousness, and anything you want, you get. Anywhere you want to go, you can go. Anything you want to experience, you can experience. Anyone you want to see, you can see. So we first see the Nexus when the Enterprise B receives the distress call from a freighter coming into contact with this Nexus. And somehow, in the time since that distress call and the Enterprise B arriving there, the crew on board the ship has already started to be taken into the Nexus.
It was like being inside joy.
For a brief moment they were inside the Nexus and they experienced that heavenly feeling. They saw their loved ones again, all the people who died during the Borg invasions. So when they were pulled out, they were dazed and confused, and Soren becomes the antagonist at that moment.
You don't understand! Let me go back!
He wants desperately to get back into the Nexus to see his dead wife and child again. We see that actually Soren is quite capable, and he succeeds in his plan. He's pulled back into the Nexus to live with his wife and children for eternity, and this is where Picard is also pulled in, having been unable to stop him. So at this point, Picard's probably not feeling too good, but lucky for him, the Nexus grabs him and allows him to see and experience exactly what he wants at that moment. So at first, it's safety and warmth. He sees a family that he never had, the nephew who died but is now alive. All is right in the world again. For a moment, he's at peace. For a moment. But Picard's mind is too active. He needed action. He felt there's something still nagging at him. If only he could go back and defeat Soren. And the Nexus responds and gives him exactly what he wants. Guinan appears to him, a warm and comforting person, just what he needed, someone who can tell him exactly what he needs to do. But wait, how about also getting one of the greatest captains in Starfleet history to help? That will even the odds. So who would you choose? Captain Kirk, of course, someone he admired since childhood. So now we find Picard on Earth, enlisting Captain Kirk's help. The Nexus is showing Picard exactly what he wants to see. Kirk is easily persuaded, and the two of them ride off into the sunset to exit the Nexus. But hold on, but was it really that easy to exit the Nexus all along? And how does Picard even know that the exit's right there? And that's because he doesn't actually exit. The Nexus is just giving and showing him what he wants. He just thinks it, and it happens. Isn't that exactly what the Nexus is supposed to do, and has been doing for him all this time? So what makes us think this isn't also part of the Nexus's fantasy, which gives him exactly what he wants? So let's assume he didn't actually exit the Nexus, and everything past this point in the movie is completely in Picard's fantasy. So this time, when he goes back, he doesn't lose. This time, he wins the day. Not only does he stop Soren, but he saves millions of lives by avoiding the supernova. And of course, his crew on the planet are all unharmed. Not one of them has so much as a cut because there are people he cares about and wants in his fantasy. But hold on, there's even more. Following this, Picard goes on a number of high adventures, all focused around him. He gets a brand new ship and is the envy of the fleet, the Enterprise E, the flagship. He finally confronts the Borg for what they did to him, but not only does he get back at the Borg and save the day again, he also visits another person who he admired from history, Zefram Cochrane, the inventor of the warp drive. And he's also amazingly there at the historic first flight and meeting with the Vulcans. Sounds like a pretty good Nexus adventure so far.
Live long and prosper.
Next, he gets the girl and yet again saves the galaxy from more bad guys. This time though, he gets to become younger and de-ages himself with a fountain of perpetual youth, something a lot of people might wish for. And following that, who better to confront as a nemesis but himself? He literally comes face to face with himself and beats him too, again saving the galaxy. Along the way, he presides over the marriage of two of his best friends who up until this point haven't even thought about it. It seems to me like all of this would make a perfect Nexus fantasy.
That's more like it.
From meeting all the people he wanted to experiencing love, experiencing perpetual youth, saving the universe, and getting all the things he wants. Picard is living fantasy after fantasy, adventures focused on him, all still inside the Nexus. Picard is still inside the Nexus. Okay, but let's look at the rest of the Enterprise crew. Because if this is true, then they should all be dead, shouldn't they? And how can Worf be on Deep Space Nine? We saw the shockwave totally destroy the planet and the crew. Or did we? Because that event occurred after Picard entered the Nexus, and everything that happened after that can be considered part of his imagination. He didn't actually see it. We saw they had time when the Amargosa Observatory also went supernova.
How long before the shockwave hits the observatory?
4 minutes, 40 seconds.
So in reality, they probably would have had some time to escape in some shuttles. It would be tight and not everyone would make it off, but certainly the bridge crew could do it. I admit this is probably the weakest part of the theory, but then again, Worf does show up in Deep Space Nine right after this event, and he looks like he's lost more than just his ship. He looks like he's also lost his captain.
Chief, do you remember the time we rescued Captain Picard from the Borg?
How could I forget? Look, I know how much you miss the Enterprise, but I'm sure they'll be building a new one soon.
It will not be the same. The Enterprise I knew is gone. Those were good years, but now it is time for me to move on.
Why is Worf so certain that those days are over? Can't he just join the Enterprise E crew? Or is it perhaps that the captain he loved is missing in action inside the Nexus, making it impossible to repeat his experience on a new Enterprise with a new captain? This could also explain why in Picard's Nexus fantasy, Worf would have the time to be able to fly from Deep Space Nine, take one of the most strategically important battleships, the Defiant, and just abandon it in order to join Picard's mission. Because it never actually happened. It only happened in Picard's Nexus adventure. He wanted Worf and the rest of the crew to join him, and the Nexus gives him what he wants.
Welcome aboard the Enterprise E, Mr. Worf.
Thank you, sir.
So if this is true, what does this hold for the future of the Picard series? No doubt, Picard is still living out more adventures in the Nexus, and in his fantasies, the fate of the universe will likely rest on his shoulders again, and he'll be able to overcome all obstacles and save the galaxy one more time. Maybe this Nexus adventure will focus on the return of the Borg, but again, he will be able to outwit them and win. Maybe it might even have some people he wants to see again, like old members of his crew who conveniently show up from time to time to help him out, like Commander Riker and Troy. So does any of that sound like the new series? And one thing's for sure, it'll be an adventure of epic proportions, since it's all in his mind. Hope you like this theory. It's a fun what if, and obviously I personally don't want it to be true, but it's a nice thought experiment. So let me know in the comments down below what you think. Is this even a possibility? Do you agree or totally disagree? And definitely please subscribe for more ideas, theories, and speculation on all things Star Trek. Thanks for watching, and trek on.